Hi, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for clicking on the video. My name's Simeon, and today I'm going to be talking with my friend, the author Lindz McLeod. Let's go. So, Lindz, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hello, and thank you for having me on again. It's such a pleasure. So my name is Linz. I write across genres. I've been published in places like Apex, Catapult, Pseudopod, Flash Fiction Online. I'm also the recently elected club president of the Edinburgh Writers Club, and I have a collection which is available in Cool Ranch and also
Ah,
Chili Heatwave
yeah.
versions called Turducken. And the reason I'm so tired during this recording is because at 3 a.m. last night I was recording a performance of a story in Turducken for Story Hour, which I got through. I got through.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I think you might be the hardest working writer I know. We were talking beforehand. I can't actually keep track of all the projects you've got going on.
Mhm.
If you write a lot of different things, what would you say would be kind of the overarching threads of what you write? For someone who's not read you before.
Hmm. I think there's I like weird. I like
Yeah.
a little bit of surrealism poking through, a little bit of magical realism, a little bit of the fantastical coming through. Um, I think probably based on what people have said, especially like last night with the story that I was reading, is I think my writing tends to be quite accessible to people who don't necessarily like genre work a lot of the time. So Jeff Ford, who actually blurbed my collection, once said to me, and this is probably one of the greatest compliments I've ever received. He was like, he read something of mine, and he was like, I don't write this genre. I don't read this genre, but I'd read anything that you wrote. It's good. And I
Oh,
was like, Jeff.
that's so nice.
So hopefully, the appeal of my work is that no matter what it is, no matter how weird it is, it's kind of accessible to anyone.
Yeah.
You don't have to have an MFA to read and understand the stories that I'm telling.
No, I don't know if you'd welcome this comparison, but I've just been binge watching Black Mirror, and actually that's what I thought of when I thought of some of the stuff in
Yeah.
Turducken. Yeah, and also you're quite experimental
Hmm.
sometimes with how you write.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil the Turducken story for anyone, but what Linz does with the consciousness on the point of view of some of the characters is really, really interesting. Do you want to just tell us a bit about kind of your philosophy with kind of experimenting with your writing?
Yeah. So I think it really sort of started for me when I began to read literature that pushed the boundaries a little bit more. I'm currently doing a PhD in creative writing, and one of the things that I'm looking at for my thesis is accessibility in literature, and also what it means to connect with your reader as well as characters connecting to each other. And to do that, sometimes you have to break some of the rules that we take for granted. So in this collection, for example, there's a piece called Cipher, which is a story told entirely in clues from a crossword. Um,
Nice.
and I really loved putting that together because and it does work as a real crossword. I actually went and found like a primary school website and made my own crossword to make sure that all the clues fit in and everything. Um, I'm just really interested in seeing like how far you can push words on a page. How what can you take away and what can you give the reader and what kind of experience can you give them? How can you make it different from everything that's been told before? All of the words that have already been used. How can you combine them in different ways? And pushing like narrative structure, the boundaries of that is something that really interests me.
Yeah, and I think what I really like about your writing, especially, is you don't just experiment, but you also try and get emotional weight behind it. So it's not
Mhm.
just I'm going to write a crossword,
Yeah.
I'm going to write a crossword that makes you feel something. And you do quite a good line in Heartbreak. I noticed a recent
Yeah.
tweet of yours.
Yeah, my friends don't like that. Apparently, I'm constantly hurting them. And I've had a little taste of that myself recently because I've been working on a new novel. And one of the arcs in it, I had sort of come up with the idea, and on paper it seemed perfectly fine, just like anything else. And as I write it, I'm starting to hurt myself. And I thought, oh, is this what I've been making everyone else feel this whole time? This is
Yeah.
terrible. But also, I know it's working, but it is really difficult to write because I'm emotionally working through that character. Um, and yeah, I agree. Like, I think it's fun to play with structure and form and content and do different things, but it also still has to land with the audience.
Yeah.
It can't all just be smoke and mirrors. There has to be something real there to connect with as well. So I try and tap into like just normal human experiences a lot of the time, but sometimes they are wrapped up in very, very strange things.
Yeah, and that idea of writing something that upsets you, that's really interesting to me. I don't think I've actually gotten to that point. I've felt like
Mm,
twinges, but not ever been genuinely upset. I wonder if
yeah.
that probably takes a lot of confidence and time to get to that stage. Um,
Yeah, it's
what would
I'm
your
not loving it.
but I bet it's going to produce something good
Mhm.
though. I
I think
what
so. Yeah, I hope so. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, because when I started, I just wanted to write novels, and then I
Mhm.
met you and I read some of your stuff. I thought I'm going to try my hand at some short pieces. What would your advice be to anyone kind of starting out on short fiction and wanting to try?
I mean, I think it's a great idea. I have mentees who I teach, and I also like coach and teach clients as well, and workshops and courses. And one of the things that I'm always a huge fervent supporter of is trying short fiction. A lot of people have said to me, and even one of my mentees said, I don't do that. Like, I can't do that. And I said, you absolutely can. And not only can you do it, but it will make your longer work so much tighter because it changes the way that you think about things. But there some ideas are too big and they need a whole novel, which is fair enough, and some ideas are just a moment presented in a snapshot. It's the equivalent of being hearing something like on a platform just before the train doors close. You don't,
Yeah,
you don't really know what's led up to that. You don't know what's happening after. You're already pulling away. You're just seeing a slice of someone else's life for a moment, and that can leave a huge impact on a person as just as much as a novel can as well. So my advice would be read widely. There's a lot of great flash fiction mags out there. Flash Fiction Online is one of my particular favorites, and they've published a couple of my pieces. Um, there are a lot of great places on the submission grinder that you can check out as well. And anything that's been on like Wigleaf or anything that's been nominated for one of the many awards is probably a good bet. My friend Megha, and my other friend Lindz McLeod, they write fantastic flash fiction as well, so you can check them out. Anytime I find something, I like tweet about it and go crazy.
nice. So
Mhm.
follow Lynn's on Twitter
Mhm.
slash X for now. I'm not convinced that's going to stay that way, but we'll
Oh,
see.
X.
Oh yeah, let's
Yeah.
not go off on that. But yes. Oh,
I'm still
um,
trying to get my head around calling them skeets now. I kind of feel like, that Steve Buscemi gif where he comes in with the skateboard. He's like, hello, fellow kids. I'm like, I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
no,
These are just always tweets to me. Everything is a tweet forever.
I just ignored it. I
Yeah.
hate it so much. I found a way to put the old Twitter icon back on my phone.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you afterwards.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't want to get too sidetracked. If people
Mhm.
wanted to find Turducken and
Mhm.
purchase it, where would they go?
So it's recently been reprinted by a wonderful press called Space Boy Books. So you can go directly to Space Boy Books and their website and check it out there. It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, it is on Bookshop, and I believe Bookshop actually have a tiny little discount on it right now, so you can get like a sneaky little bit of money off. And it's also you can find all these links on my website as well, if that's more useful.
Yeah, and I would highly recommend it. And if you get it, watch out for the starfish story because that got me, even though it was only a page long.
Yeah, it's funny how sometimes the shorter ones are the ones that get people. It was really interesting putting this collection together because I did it entirely by myself, and I obsessed about the placement of stories because I
Yeah,
wanted to have, some of the short ones bookending some of the longer stories. But I also wanted the reader to have a kind of a journey as they went through it. So it was very much a, okay, if I'm building a roller coaster, where are the peaks and troughs going to happen here?
Oh,
It was, yeah.
it's kind of like making a mixtape.
It is very much like, it
Yeah.
was actually originally called Mixtape.
Ah, cool.
And then I wrote the turducken story and thought, oh no, there's the title right there. But
Yeah.
I live in hope of maybe writing another collection and calling it Mixtape as well. I did start writing a bunch of stories that were based on, that were very weird versions of songs from like the 80s that I liked. I did a very miserable dystopian Total Eclipse of the Heart that actually got published,
I will read that. Yeah, yeah.
which
That's
was fun.
yeah. That's right up my alley. Okay, now I said at the top you are a very busy writer, and you've also got another book coming out called Beast. Can you tell us a bit about Beast?
Yeah, so Beast is what happens when you become really bogged down in the minutiae of a Disney film and can't quite get the idea out of your head. And I kind of wanted to go into the class struggles that are present and not talked about in the animated and live action Disney Beauty and the Beasts, because there's no reason why this witch who has a beef with a young prince should curse his whole castle and his servants. That feels pretty classist to me. And I thought, if I was that butler, I'd have an issue with this. So I had started writing it, and then I realized that it actually did make sense to set it at the time of the French Revolution, because it goes very
Yeah,
nicely with the class struggles and the class warfare. And it turned into something that is creepy and funny and touching and heartbreaking all at the same time. My proofreader said it was one of the best things she'd read all year, which was always nice because she had to
oh,
read it
nice.
very, very closely and was probably hating it by the end. But she was very complimentary, which was really nice. And it's coming out with a different publisher very soon. I'm not sure when exactly, but very soon.
Okay, well, it sounds amazing. You and I, speaking of minutiae, you and I talked about this last time.
Mhm.
I think Chip and
Yes, yes, we
and
did.
Mrs.
Yeah,
Potts.
yeah.
She never seemed
He is
like she
not
was
her
his
son.
mum, did she?
It doesn't make, she's far too old. I mean, look, she's very much past menopause. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't make any sense. I will argue every single point of this film all day, but like, this is just a random child. This is either his grandmother or she's just adopted. So my book also takes that into account as well. It was kind of like, if there is a random child in the castle, where did he come from and who might his real parents be? And that is a mystery that is revealed within the story itself and plays a huge part about in the both the kind of climax of the story, and also the idea of inheritance and entitlement, and once again class struggle.
Nice. And I'm going to assume, because of the French Revolution theme, that Lumiere might be a slightly more in-depth character in your novel. I mean, I love
Um,
Lumiere in the film, but
yeah.
he's kind of, he's a one-note joke
Mhm.
almost. But he is
Yeah. Yeah.
ripe for expansion, I think.
Yes. So I wouldn't really say there is a Lumiere, but there's definitely a Cogsworth.
Oh,
So
cool.
Beast is from the point of view of the butler. And he really wants to be a very good butler and to live up to the expectations and ideals of his late father, who was also a butler. And that is pretty much all he wants from life. And everything is just consistently getting in the way of that.
Yeah.
Whether it's the class warfare, the servants' mutiny, the young master beginning to turn into something horrific, a witch's curse, and so on. All he wants to do is just lay the silverware every day and deliver a nice meal. And he never gets that really. He's just plagued with problems over and over and over. I have a soft spot in my heart for him, actually, even though he is extremely rigid and not necessarily a nice person. But he does sort of believe that he is trying to be, um, in a misguided way.
Yeah.
He's doing his best, and I have a little soft spot for those very morally grey characters who are kind of trying their best, and who are deeply flawed and know it.
Oh,
So
those are the best characters.
yeah,
Characters who try, but something's stopping them.
yeah,
Usually their own kind of
yeah,
problems.
very much getting in his own way. And
Yeah.
when I first was writing this book, I had sent audio recordings of each chapter back to my parents every week. I would send them another one, and they would sit down with a cup of coffee and they would listen to it together. And I came home one day for a visit and said, like, what do you think? And the butler had just done something which happens in the first half of the book and is very much a turning point for him and the plot. And my parents, they had not really discussed it between themselves beforehand, but it turns out that they came down on completely opposite sides of this argument. And so they
Oh,
spent the next few minutes arguing in the kitchen about whether he should or should not have done the thing. And they were using the arguments made by both him and other characters, and I found that really funny in a way, because
yeah,
that's
that's
exactly
good
what I
though.
wanted, is for the reader to see exactly how he gets there and to know what he's doing is wrong, but the logic is sound. And so
Yeah,
if you're in that position, could you do the same thing if it meant protecting someone? It's a very difficult trolley problem in a way. So it proved to me that it was working, that my parents devolved into an argument about the semantics of it.
nice. Well, it sounds fantastic. What who would you say were your main writing influences? I mean, I know your writing's quite broad, but does anyone
Mhm.
come to mind?
Oh, for sure. There's definitely a lot of people who have influenced me over the years. Um, Jack London is, I have a very soft spot in my heart for the way that Jack London put together stories and the way that he made the Yukon into a character in its own right. I also very much love Carmen Marie Machado, whose collection, Her Body and Other Parties, completely changed my life. Last year, I read Rumina Lamb's Leave the World Behind. Um, if you had told me prior to that book that someone could write a chapter about a bougie white woman buying groceries and I would find it the single most engrossing thing I had read in quite some time, I would have laughed in your face. But in fact, it is so. And the book itself is a wonder, but that was a particular eye opener. And you can actually see elements of that in Turducken in the thruple stories, where I tried to replicate the sort of obsession with food and the description of food in some way. And I'm very influenced by I have very excellent writer friends,
Yeah,
and I'm always looking to learn something from them. And my wonderful partner is also a very talented writer, so we are constantly each other's first reader, and help each other kind of grow all the time, which is really nice.
that is lovely.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if I've written the question as how did you find your niche? But I feel like you have
Huh,
several niches.
I
How did
do.
you kind of discover you wanted to write weird things? Might be a better question.
Hmm. I think maybe I am just weird, and it just kind of comes out. Um, like I said earlier, there's a lot of things that I write about that probably could be normal, but I like this spin that my brain has put on those things. So I part of the novel that I'm working on at the moment is about a mammoth who is an undertaker. Um, and that sounds very weird, but it works. And there are other characters, other megafauna in the book, and one of them is a crocodile who is a pastor. Um, and he you could easily probably change him into just being a regular human male pastor, and have some of the story be the same way. But the things that he wants, I don't think would be quite so creepily overt. I think it is easier to see, in some ways, the way that his own desires are kind of creeping insidiously into the community. And it
Yeah.
also helps that he has like a little bird in his mouth that cleans his teeth for him in a really horrible way. And there's just something really, like, he is a monster. And you can see that, but at the same time, everyone accepts him, maybe because of that he's a monster. Um, so I really like the juxtaposition between the danger of it and the safety that he is kind of pretending to offer. You're never quite sure whether he really is, or whether it's just my character's interpretation of him is that she just doesn't trust him at all. So it's interesting to kind of see, like, from other perspectives. I think I decided at some point that human wasn't enough for this project. I wanted to go just really into the feet and the hooves and the paws and the claws of megafauna, and walk a few miles in their paw steps and see, kind of how I could look at things from a different point of view.
No, I really like that. And sometimes animals are just more emotionally impactful for
Mm-hmm.
some reason. Like, have you ever read Mouse, the graphic novel?
No, I know of it, of course, but I haven't
Yeah.
read.
So
Yeah,
you know the idea
yeah,
of it, but just having them be animals
yeah,
for some reason makes it hit even harder.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
The
uh,
same with The Life of Pi as well,
oh yeah,
which I really liked, and was very good as a stage play as well. If you at the very end, he kind of says like, if you knew that these people were people, which story do you prefer? Is it the one with the animals? Does it make more sense if we couch them as animals so that you can see the violent behavior, or are we prepared to accept that humans are also just animals at their core? So yeah, I think it's interesting to look at other perspectives like that. And of course, Turducken, no spoilers, but Turducken does a little bit of that in the titular story as well.
yeah. Right. A couple more questions. What is the best piece of writing advice you've received, do you think?
So I'm going to quote the wonderful Jeff Ford again, because he had the single best piece of advice I've ever heard. I was TAing for him at the Writers Hotel in 2020 in 2020. And at one point he just sort of stopped someone mid sentence and said, "Look, don't try to do too much. Every new writer wants to write the next great novel, this once in a generation thing that will last forever and people will talk about. And when you try to do everything, you end up doing nothing. So pick one thing, pick one theme, and do it well, and the other things will fall into place." And I think about that a lot when I'm writing, and I think about it a lot when I'm teaching, because I see people get in their own ways. Rather than just taking one piece of string, they take the whole ball and then they run around and then they're like falling over it. And I'm like, just one thing at a time. It can feel so simplistic. And of course, a novel must be many things all tied together. But when you focus on one thing and getting that one thing right, the other things do tend to lock into place.
Yeah.
The human brain is a wonderful thing, and it will start to fill in those gaps for you if you just stop meddling with it. So I think about that piece of advice a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of like that Stephen King idea of the story's there, you just have to unearth it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like that, not getting in your own way too
Yeah.
much. Yeah. Now this might be a very difficult question for you to answer, but what would your writing goals be for the year, given that
Oh
you've
dear.
got so many projects on the go?
I mean, I have a big spreadsheet and I have a big document where I have a huge list of things. I had to stop showing it to people because they kept saying things like "Dear God" and "Are you okay?" Um, so I am working on quite a few different things at the moment. I'm writing some sample chapters and some proposals to go out with. I'm also finishing off the Mammoth novel at the moment as well. I was kind of hoping to do that by the end of next month, so we'll sort of see where that goes. Um, I do have some other announcements coming up very, very soon. So I keep saying September, but that's only a week away now. Um,
Yeah.
that I haven't been able to talk about for a while, but I'm extremely excited, and I have been vague tweeting just a little bit about them. But I have got more things coming soon, and behind the scenes, I've also been working on other stuff as well. When the writer strike in Hollywood is over, there should be possibly more things that I can talk about there as well. So fingers crossed that that works out and they get
Amazing.
paid, because that is dragging on far too long.
Yes, yes, it is.
Hmm.
Okay, now, last thing I'd like to ask you is a lot of people I know have trouble kind of with motivation and staying consistent, and I get the feeling those aren't really issues for you. So, do you have any advice for those for being motivated, staying consistent, writing every day?
So I think I don't necessarily agree that you have to write every day. But you do have to write, and if that works for you, you know, if that's something that you feel like you need a routine, then by all means get into it. But the thing that I see that trips people up the most out of almost anything is two things. One, the idea that they have in their head is so good, they think, that when they start to write it on paper, it's not as good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they get caught up in like, oh, it's not perfect the way it is in my head. And I'm like, it will never be. You are just getting it out there. You can't edit a blank page. You have to get it down. And for those people that I've coached who have that kind of like writer's block, I tell them to lean into it, and I get them to purposefully write the worst version of their idea, because firstly it turns out really really funny a lot of the time, and also once they've written the worst version of it, there's nowhere to go but up. It takes away a lot of the pressure of kind of, you know, writing it and going, well, what if I did write the worst version? And if you do, you're like, well, that's, you know, I keep saying like, no, there is no elite task force who's waiting to break into your laptop and share all your first drafts to social media so we can all laugh at you. It is between you and the laptop. You are safe, you are fine, but you have to get it out. And the other thing I see people generally having problems with is they set their goals too high and then they don't
Yeah.
achieve them and then they get really stressed. So I usually say, you know, what is the minimum that you want to do? And then I'm like, pick something less than that. So if they say I want to write like 1,000 words a day, but you know, I consistently don't hit it, I'll say, you know, how many words do you hit a day? And they'll say 500. And I'm like, okay, do you think you could write 200 every day? And people will say, well, obviously. And I'm like, so then that's your goal, because you know what feels really good? Hitting your
The
goal. It's
goal.
just
Yeah.
dopamine over and over. And if you hit that goal every single day, guess what? You're just going to blow past it. You're going to keep going. You don't make it harder for yourself. This is already a hard process. You know, give yourself all of the tools that you need. You wouldn't stand at the bottom of a mountain and go, well, I guess I better just run up that without any equipment. You know, like in one day I'll just have to just keep going until I dropped it. You would do it bit by bit. You would have the right equipment. You would take your time. You would sum it carefully. Writing is
Yeah.
the same thing. You know, don't rush. Just do it.
Absolutely. It's funny you said that because that's my thing. I do 200 words a day
Hmm.
and I literally just do that. And if I'm feeling good, I'll write more. And if not,
Exactly.
I'll just do 200 words, shut the laptop.
Yep.
And I just do that every day because I find that easier, to be honest. Like the consistency of it, just doing it
Yep.
every day at the same time. You
Hmm.
don't even think about it. You just sit down and do it. And if it's not good stuff, it's not good stuff that day. I can
It
edit
doesn't
it
matter
later.
as long as you do it, and like your brain is still getting that wonderful checkbox feeling. You know, you're still getting that little hit of dopamine. Anything that you can do so that when you're turning up, you don't feel like, oh God, here we go. You know, you want to be excited. You want to turn up. There's another trick that I use for people, although this what I find it really annoying, so I don't do it for myself. But it kind of, the reason that it works is because it's annoying. If you're having trouble writing, you can stop in the middle of a sentence and leave it till the next day, and it's
Ooh.
the worst. I hate it.
It's like The Sopranos.
Yeah,
I know.
but it does work because you cannot wait to finish it off, and then
Yeah.
you're writing already. But it takes an immense amount of willpower to stop in the middle of a sentence. Um,
That's a really good trick, actually. I
mhm.
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, I may try it. Right.
I mean,
Well,
I'm full of all of these tricks. Like I work with a lot of people who, as I say, who have writer's block or who struggle in various ways. I have a whole toolkit of things um, that will get them writing again, because that is my job.
nice. Well, if you've enjoyed listening to Lynn's and you'd like to either read her work or maybe work with her if you're having writer's block or similar issues, I will link to her website down below. Thank you so much, Lynn's, for coming on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to hearing about your announcements.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.